if we are lucky, there is something in our lives that pulls us forward into the future with mouth-watering anticipation. Some hope, some vision or dream, some grace, some beauty that we are trying to create in the world or in our lives. In our scripture reading this morning for the Israelites, that was the dream and the image of the promised land carrying them through the desert. In the Wizard of Oz, the dream that pulls on Dorothy and sustains her in times of difficulty is that sense of home for her, that special place where she is loved fully and completely. Yet, ironically, for Dorothy, as it was for the Israelites, as it will be for us, and apparently even LeBron James, the journey to truly going back home starts with a journey first away. Such is the journey of faith. It is a forward journey back home to God and God's loving embrace. Luckily for Dorothy, her way is marked clearly with a yellow brick road. But where is the yellow brick road for us, for our journeys of faith? What will lead us back home to God? Well, metaphorically and today, quite literally, it is indeed the yellow brick road is found right here, right in the middle of us, this church. And here's why. To complete her journey, Dorothy needs faithful companions to walk with her on her journey, arm in arm, offering their gifts along the way. And we need the same. The first companion that Dorothy meets, of course, is the Scarecrow, who doesn't have a brain. At first, Dorothy thinks it's odd that someone without a brain can speak. But the Scarecrow reminds her, you know, he says, Dorothy, some people without brains, they do an awful lot of talking. I won't comment on that. But this I do know, that at home my cable company offers 3,000 channels. The Sirius radio that's pre-programmed in our car has over 1,000 channels. A simple Google search produces 191 million results in less than a quarter of a second. In our world today, there are a lot of voices. A lot of voices vying for our attention, and some, at least, certainly emanate from brains. How then, in this myriad of voices, both spoken and written, that surrounds us like a cloud, that asks for our allegiance, how are we to distinguish those that proclaim an eternal wisdom, those that can lead us to greater healing? How do we filter out those precious few that can guide us to a greater beauty and peace and dignity, not just for us, but for all? Well, the church can be such a place, such a filter. The community gathered in silent reflection, asking respectful questions through meditation and prayer. That is where the still small voice of God can emerge. Here, like Dorothy and the Scarecrow, we can put our minds together. We can brainstorm a beauty and ways to paint it through our loving actions, individually and corporately. Next, Dorothy meets the Tin Man, who is in search of a heart. He declares, I'm presuming I could be human if I only had a heart. Speaking of brains, what wisdom! To be human is to feel compassion for all people, in fact, all living things. If somehow we begin to lose our compassion, then we lose our humanness, our humaneness, that element within us that reflects the very image of God. And unfortunately, our compassion, our heart is being threatened these days. Just look back on this week. Some have voiced outrage that some in Atlanta have dared to treat and heal a young doctor who has dedicated his life because of his faith to travel to Africa to help alleviate the suffering of the Ebola epidemic. Fear can too easily, displace compassion in the human heart. It did so, you may recall, from the two that passed by, the man in the ditch, in the parable, the Good Samaritan. It did as well with those that banished the lepers in Jesus' day outside of the city, the same lepers that Jesus gathered with and healed. Like the 10 men in search of greater compassion, a more loving heart, we must be vigilant. Vigilant not to give in to fear. We must follow our hearts. We must not allow them to become hard or numb to the suffering that we see in the news. We must remain human. We must protect the part of ourselves, the compassionate spirit which is truly of God. And lastly, fittingly, Dorothy meets, of course, the Cowardly Lion. It is fitting because if we are to live with heart in this world, if we are to make compassion our North Star, if we are to put our minds together not only to discern the voice of God, but have the audacity to actually follow it into greater blessing, then we will certainly need not just a small measure, but a large one of compassion and courage. We will need courage to face whatever wicked witch-like forces impede our path to a more godly place, a more just, a more joyful world. We will need courage to face the fears that clip the wings of our hopes, of our dreams, of a better life and greater peace. So let us this morning learn from Dorothy and her friends, as the children will this coming week in church camp. For Dorothy and her friends, they are we. Each of us are imperfect. Each of us are lacking in something. Each of us are a little bit at least lost. And each of us are in search of something, a hope, a dream that lives within us. Dorothy and her friends fulfilled their dream. They received their healing. They entered into their joy when they felt for one another, when they reasoned things out together, when they bolstered each other's courage by facing dangers and fears together, literally traveling the path arm in arm as they go down the yellow brick road. That is what this church is. That's what this church can be. That is what is available here in this place and among one another. Take a look around you. Like Dorothy here at the very edge of the yellow brick road, you have found companions for your journey of faith, And those companions are more precious than gold. What dreams lie beyond the rainbow for you? I don't know what those are, but I know this. Here is where you will find what you need to reach them. So Godspeed, and may all your journeys end somewhere over the rainbow.